Hey everybody, Pete Pardo here from Sea Tranquilla. We have another edition of our Deep Cuts from Classic Album series. Today we're going to look at the platinum-selling 1976 release from Blue Oyster Cult, Agents of Fortune. Now, if you guys watch the History of Blue Oyster Cult show that I did a few weeks back, you'll know that Agents of Fortune is not one of my favorite Blue Oyster Cult albums. It's a good album, don't get me wrong, but compared to the kind of the ones that came before it and the ones that came after it, I find it one of the weaker ones among those 70s releases from the band. But that's not to diminish the impact it had. It's the most popular Blue Oyster Cult album, obviously the highest charting album, biggest selling album, and it also contains their most endearing hit ever, the top 20 classic Don't Fear the Reaper. Okay, so we're not going to talk much about Don't Fear the Reaper today. Sure, it has been an enduring, perennial favorite for casual and hardcore Blue Oyster Cult fans for decades and decades. It's the one song that everybody goes to hear when they see them live to this day. It's obviously their only real breakthrough. You know, they had a couple other hit singles that did fairly well, but none like Don't Fear the Reaper, and certainly, you know, that's their signature song, right? Deservedly so. It's a great song. Whether or not you ever need to hear it again or need to hear it more than like once or twice a year, I actually listened to it this morning. Hadn't heard it in a little while. It's a great tune, okay? Got to give it its due. But we're not really here to talk about Don't Fear the Reaper. The idea behind the Deep Cut show here is to look at the other album tracks on a classic album that had like a hit single or two. So that's what we're going to do. So this album kicks off with This Ain't the Summer of Love, which could be my favorite song on the album. Well, maybe not. It's definitely in the top three. A really good rocker sung by Eric Bloom. Just a great way, a lively rocker, great way to kind of kick off the album here. And that's followed by True Confessions, which is probably my least favorite song. All right, that's a Alan Lanier written track. I believe he sings lead vocals on that as well. You know, again, I don't hate the song, but I think it's one of the weaker tunes here. To me, it sounds like Blue Oyster Cult, or Lanier, especially because he wrote the tune, basically trying to come up with a poor man's Rolling Stones type of track. It almost sounds to me like a Keith Richards song. Maybe it's the vocal style. It's just kind of like a really laid back kind of light rocker. I don't know. I'm not a big fan. It's probably one of my least favorite tunes on the album. Then, of course, comes Don't Fear the Reaper. We already mentioned that. And then number 4 track on the album, which probably is my favorite. Okay, it's definitely, like I said, top 3 for me is probably This Ain't the Summer of Love, Don't Fear the Reaper, and ETI, Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Just a really great, got the great piano. Again, another great vocal from Eric. And, you know, they mentioned the Agents of Fortune title of the album in the song. Dun, 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 bum, bum, just a very lively, upbeat, very cool hard rock song. A top shelf Blue Oyster Cult song from the entire discography, in my opinion. Next to that, after that is The Revenge of Vera Gemini, which is kind of like a prog tune, sort of, very haunting song. Now this was Patti Smith, I believe. Yeah, Patti Smith co-wrote this song with Albert Bouchard, and just it's got a haunting chorus, great vocals overall. Patti contributes some backing vocals on this track. Very, very cool song. Nice use of keyboards, crisp guitar work. Very, very underrated song. I like that a lot. And that's followed up by Sinful Love, another really cool, catchy BOC tune. Again, this album is not as heavy as the couple albums that came before it. So some of these tunes, not as much on the guitar crunch from Buck Dharma, certainly great leads, but it's more of a kind of like mid-pace level collection of tunes. And I think that had to do with the fact that, you know, all the guys in the band were writing. Everybody was singing here. So this is not your typical album where Eric Bloom sings 75% of the tunes, and then maybe you get 2 by Buck and maybe 1 by one of the Bouchard brothers. This is basically like everybody's taking turns writing and singing. So it's a very varied album. It's not your typical dark and heavy BOC album like the 2 that came before it. But it's still good stuff. Sinful Love, great tune. Tattoo Vampire, fun song, very cool riff from Buck. You know, I like that song. Again, not one of the best tunes on the album, but a good song, solid song. What else we have here? And so from there, we're moving over to, obviously, this is side 2, Morning Final. Again, another kind of proggy, mellow tune. Not one of my favorites on the album. Tenderloin, another kind of odd song, but a cool hook. Nice chorus on that song. Again, very good use of keyboards, mostly from Lanier on this album, although I think Buck plays a little bit of synths on here as well. But you can see and hear the kind of psych and the prog elements coming through a bit on some of these, especially like the side 2 of the album tracks. And then finishing it all off is Debbie Denise, which again, with True Confession, is probably my least favorite song on here. Again, not terrible, not great, but solid. So overall, a pretty solid album, carried obviously by Don't Fear the Reaper. So you have to wonder, looking back on the Agents of Fortune album, looking back on it, if there was no Don't Fear the Reaper on this album, where would this kind of sit for a lot of people, and how would it have sold? Probably not that great, because I think as a whole it's not although it's been deemed a classic album, and again there are a handful of tracks which probably help make it that, but compared to the 2 albums that came before it, and maybe the couple came after it, in my opinion, not quite as strong. But some very good, when you revisit some of these albums that maybe historically you didn't enjoy as much as other people, like as I always do before I do these deep cut shows, I actually go and listen to the album again just to kind of give myself a little refresher, because I hadn't listened to this in probably a couple months at least. And, Sinful Love, Tattoo Vampire, Tenderloin, The Revenge of Vera Gemini, pretty strong songs. Maybe not up to the level of This Ain't the Summer of Love, E.T.I., and Don't Fear the Reaper, but solid Blue Oyster Cult. I wish that this album might have been a little bit heavier, but I think some of the songwriting is there. Again, got everybody contributing, so it's very varied. A lot of different flavors on here, but it is what it is. Agents of Fortune, 1976, May of 1976. A classic album. There's some of the deep cuts. I'm assuming most of you probably know this album pretty well, but if you don't, go investigate it. Maybe not one of their top albums, but still, sits high enough up there in the canon, right? So anyway, visit us on the web at www.catranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on the Mighty YouTube as often as possible. We got more of these deep cut shows coming up. You guys have been giving me a lot of ideas for others. We're going to do more Blue Oyster Cult, so fear not. I just wanted to pick this one first. Got some of you guys are screaming for some Deep Purple, and we're going to try and get to as much as you can. Fleetwood Mac Rumors is coming up soon, too. Got lots to do, so we'll see you real soon, guys. Take care. Bye.